Earl Grey, hot.
Welcome to the Picard Maneuver. I'm Tim.
I'm Joel.
Today we're going to tell you what we thought of the new Star Trek Picard episode number 1, Remembrance.
So we're going to talk about that, but if you are looking for a video that breaks down the episode scene by scene, we've done one like that too, so check it out.
We're going to talk about parts of the episode we liked and parts of the episode we didn't like.
No, sir, wait! Captain!
I really liked the music in the opening credits. It was sort of a orchestral, instrumental take on the classical type of Star Trek theme in a way that really fit Picard. So I really liked the music, the opening music.
Yeah, it felt like the tone was right for what we were about to see. As far as the animation, it was okay. I think the imagery was good, but it's the kind of animation that kind of a lot of shows are using nowadays.
One thing about Star Trek has always had such timeless opening credits.
Except for Enterprise.
All right, another part that I think we both really liked, Picard's Romulan friends at the Vineyard, Laris and Azure Ban. They were subtle, but really well done. I feel like the actors were fantastic, and with just very few scenes, very short sort of interplays, we were able to get a lot about their relationships, their background with Picard, how they feel about Picard, their sort of protectiveness and their respect.
Overall, I think the characters were really great and added to us getting to know not only them quickly, but also where Picard is at now in his journey.
Get dressed, Your Highness. Don't forget to wash your hands.
10 years still have to remind you.
And to be honest, I feel like as a huge fan of Picard and TNG for so many years, I really identify with that protectiveness that they had.
Yeah, that's true.
One big negative of the episode is a lot of the scene-to-scene plotting and pacing around Daj's character. There seemed to be a point where she sort of separates from Picard and then sort of comes back to Picard. But if we look back even at her first scene, there was maybe some problems in that scene as well.
Yeah, that's kind of where I first started to feel a little bit like this introduction of the Daj character. I feel like it could have been stronger, which is fine. I like the actress. I think there's a lot of promise for her character, but a lot of the writing she was given for this episode I feel like was a bit thin, so it didn't really give her a chance to really shine. Starting a scene with her boyfriend, it's a little weak. There's not a lot of depth to that. Maybe we could have seen her doing something a little more, I don't know, interesting where we see kind of who she is, what she cares about. But really, she's just hanging out with her boyfriend.
Robotics or...
Dude, I'm a fellow in artificial intelligence and quantum consciousness.
And then they get attacked. So, and that felt rushed. You know, all of a sudden he's dead. We're meeting them and he's dead. So, yeah, I think that was some of the issue I found with the Daj characters. A lot of it just kind of felt paced a little bit badly and a lot of exposition. A couple other, I guess, kind of like small things related to her character that I wasn't a huge fan of. She does this super jump in a scene where she's kind of doing the ninja stuff. I have no problem with her having amazing ninja skills. I even have no problem with her being able to jump incredible distances. For some reason, though, it just didn't look real.
One plot device that was used with her character that seemed very, very awkward and forced and made other characters say ridiculous things was the necklace.
That's an unusual necklace. Does this mean anything to you?
Where did you get that?
That's nice. Your necklace.
They thought, well, we need something to connect everything to everything else. And the necklace became that thing. And from the very beginning, as soon as Picard says the first line, you know, that's an interesting necklace you're wearing, I thought, that doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel like how he would react to a necklace, when really the necklace wasn't that interesting.
It wasn't that interesting.
I thought maybe if it was like blinking or like it like shined in his eye and he's like, what's that necklace doing? And I've seen people wear necklaces like that and I didn't think to ask. Maybe I should have asked them because maybe they were an android twin. And that kind of brings us to the next point, which was the twin.
It felt like the writers wanted a scene where a girl comes to Picard at his vineyard and like asks for help. And Picard immediately recognized, I've got to help this girl. But they also wanted the girl to be somewhere else, and Picard have to research and find her. And they didn't know how to get from one to the other.
It's just kind of a lot to take to say, like, you know, the necklace is the symbol means there's twins, the twins means one's dead, but it's okay because we have an extra one.
The problem with the pacing and the way she jumped to being with Picard, arbitrarily wasn't with Picard, so Picard could go do the research at the archives by himself, and then arbitrarily was with Picard, and then they quickly talk about everything because they know in the next scene she's got to leave. Maybe a lot of these things around the twin and that relationship could have made a lot more sense if they'd done the pacing a lot better.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where this character goes.
She's dead. She's not going anywhere.
So another kind of thing that I wasn't a huge fan of with this episode, in way of scenes, is the scene where Picard is being interviewed. I think that some of the exposition in that felt forced. It felt like the writers kind of brainstormed and thought, how can we tell the audience a bunch of stuff all at once in a really short episode? Let's have someone interview him and tell him all the stuff that has happened, and that's how we'll learn about it. Again, I don't so much mind that he's being interviewed. I kind of liked that. I kind of liked that as an opportunity to show how Picard feels now. But there was a lot of exposition in that scene. I think it could have been maybe toned down a little bit, a little more subtle. Her getting him riled up did lead to something I really liked about this episode, which is, it's been a while, but we got one of Picard's famous speeches where he starts to kind of get riled up and angry. And I liked it. I thought it was great.
We withdrew. The galaxy was mourning, burying its dead. And Starfleet slunk from its duties.
Another thing that I liked about the episode is bringing back of the Maddox character from TNG. We haven't seen him, but they do mention him, and I just think that's cool because it kind of pulls us back to the reality of the TNG story, and we know this character. We know he had issues with androids, and then he became friends with Data, and now to see that he may be involved in some way with Dodge and the creation of a synthetic that is more human-like. It's kind of cool. I kind of like that tie-in.
We learned more about Maddox when we were introduced to the Agnes character at the Daystrom Institute. And I liked that character. I thought she was well portrayed. Even though she had very few scenes, we got a real sense of her sort of social insecurities and about where she was in her life after the rug of her life's work has been pulled from under her.
I found her character easy to empathize with. Like, I think I was like, I get where she's at. I think that sometimes helps with the characters. Like, you know immediately how you would feel if you were in this situation, and she's in this empty room.
It's a ghost town.
Where, like, at a certain point, this was like a laboratory, and they were working on things, and now it's empty, and she's basically like, the research can't go on anymore. One thing that I wasn't a huge fan of was the B4 drawer. It's not so much that what happened in the scene, and it wasn't with Agnes or Picard. It was just the fact that she's explaining to Picard that B4 didn't work, that he had to be decommissioned or whatever, because, I mean, obviously now because androids are outlawed, synths and androids, but also because she's kind of explaining to Picard that he could never become Data. This exposition, Picard would know this already. He would already know that B4 didn't work out because he loved Data, and B4 was potentially the new Data. So he would absolutely know that B4 was in this drawer and all this. So I guess I just kind of felt like that wasn't realistic for the situation with Picard.
It was definitely a line that didn't really make sense to tell Picard, but it made a lot of sense to tell the audience that, hey, Data's not coming back this way. One thing I really did like about the show, and I am liking about this episode, is overall I really like Picard. I like the presence that Patrick Stewart is giving him. I really like who he is. I like the relationship he has with the world. I like where he's going from one place, and by the end of the episode he's going to another place. I feel like that's how Picard would act. It completely rung true to me. Patrick Stewart's portrayal of Picard was just perfect for me.
There's been a time where you haven't seen a character. There's always a concern that they're going to play the character in a way, or Patrick Stewart would have been told to play the character in a way that just does not feel believable for who they would be in this kind of place in their life. Didn't feel that way at all. I felt like absolutely Picard felt like Picard. I didn't have any issue at all. Loved seeing him in this role. He's real again. Captain Picard is a real character again. He's not just this fantasy character. He's real again. Like, it felt very real. So speaking of people who played their character well and felt absolutely right, Brent Spiner absolutely killed it, as he always did as Data. But it has been a long time. I was a little worried. When I saw him in the trailers, he seemed to look a little bit different. Honestly, all that went out the window when I saw it in the show. I wasn't taken out of the scene for a moment thinking anything negative about Data. I literally was like, this is Data. Brent Spiner has this character dialed in. I feel like it was like he had never stepped away from the character at all.
I can see that, Captain. Do you wish to call or fold?
Spiner has not gotten enough accolades for his portrayal of Data on Star Trek: The Next Generation and the movies. That is one of TV's greatest characters, one of the greatest sort of Pinocchio-type characters in any media.
He plays it perfectly, yeah. And we were talking about, like, imagine that moment being cast as this Data character in The Next Generation. I'm sure there's interviews out there of Brent Spiner talking about it. But then finding out that you're an android, you have no emotions, but you've been written as a character who desperately wants emotion, acts like you have emotion in certain scenes, conveys it so well, but you're still an android. I don't know how he pulls it off so well. He's awesome.
One thing I was really worried about is there was going to be a wrong balance between action and the wrong balance between fan service. And I actually think there wasn't too much action. There was really only two action scenes. So the fan service to me felt like the right amount. There were several references. There was Earl Grey tea all over the place.
Earl Grey never fails.
But to me, that actually felt good.
Didn't feel forced as far as fan service. It felt like we were in this world. We were thrown into it. We were with Picard. We were watching him do stuff. So back to something I wasn't a huge fan of, the Borg Cube. Okay, so this is in the episode. This is something that's really cool. The Romulans are using it for whatever. We haven't really figured that out yet, but they're there, and we see the Borg Cube. That's how the episode ends. And you have this kind of slow pull out from the cube. We don't really know it's a Borg Cube yet, and all of a sudden we realize it is a Borg Cube. Well, the thing was, I knew it was a Borg Cube the whole time, and it's because it was in all the trailers. So immediately, as soon as I saw them in this facility, I thought, this is where they are. For me, it kind of dulled the surprise I would have felt for seeing it the first time in the first episode if it hadn't been in the trailers. So I wish they had left that out of the trailers and just let it be revealed in that episode. Speaking of that, though, a positive about this is that I love how the episode opened with the slow push in on 10 forward in the Enterprise D. Very, very cool. The episode ended with a pull out from the Borg Cube. So it was a cool bookend to open and close the episode that way. Stylistically, love it. Just wish that they hadn't shown the Borg Cube in the trailers.
One thing we sort of talked about as a big negative, Daj's very rushed development and exposition for most of the episode. I'm hoping could leave room now for Soji's character, because we already know what she's capable of and where she's going, so they don't need to sort of force her to be into action sequences and things like that don't make sense.
I think one of the things that we realized after the fact is I think a lot of that can be attributed to the fact that the episode is only 45 minutes long. I guess I'd call that a negative. I think overall they should have maybe made the running time a little longer. I feel like it felt like it needed to be a little longer.
After watching the episode, I feel much, much better about Patrick Stewart's involvement in the episode. I think some people were a little worried about that, but if we look back at all of our negatives for this episode, almost none of it has anything to do with Patrick Stewart. I don't feel like the awkward and the forced explanations and exposition, none of that was coming from Patrick Stewart. I feel like Patrick Stewart's involvement has all been positive.
Picard's supposed to be really good at reading and like being great on all this literature stuff, but the actual classics he reads are like things that everybody's read. So you'd presume by the time he's like in his 50s when the show was on, like he'd probably have read all those books already. Like if he was actually a guy who read a lot, he'd be reading books I haven't heard of. Riddle me this.
As someone who has kind of written a little bit for short films and things like that, something that's so important and can make a huge difference in when you're developing a story is whether that story has heart. And often a show that's maybe not as good as another will be successful, maybe the story isn't as strong, when there is heart, when people feel like there's passion or something real behind a story. And honestly, I had the same concern. We talked about it. That maybe the Patrick Stewart involvement, he might have had too much influence on the story in a way that could impact it negatively. But I can say I really don't feel that. If anything, I think that Patrick Stewart's passion for justice as a human, I could feel that through the character. I do believe he does have that passion.
It works for Stewart, but it also works really well for the Picard character. So on one hand, we've been very critical of certain plotting elements, but we've been very positive about Patrick Stewart, Brent Spiner, and a lot of the characters in the show. So that's where we're at right now. We'll see where we're going to be going forward with the show. We're excited to see episode 2, and hopefully some of the plotting stuff that we disliked are smoothed out.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm feeling overall positive about where the show's going. I'm excited to see the next episode. So thanks for joining us on the Picard Maneuver, where we went over the episode, what we liked and didn't like, and as always, I hope we kept you engaged.
There's no legacy as rich as honesty.
Can't argue.
He said that.
Oh yeah, it was in the episode.